Hi, everybody. Everyone's being muted as you come on in. We have over 100 people registered, so we want to avoid a lot of feedback. So we're muting everybody, but you can unmute yourselves when you want to speak. Michelle or Lynn, not if you can hear me. Okay, thank you. Perfect. In case you don't have it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop in the agenda link to the chat.
Is anybody talking, or I'm just trying to see if my speakers are working?
Your speakers are working. I can hear you. We're all
Okay.
just being very quiet.
Thank you, Deborah.
Everybody's being muted as they come in just to avoid feedback issues, but you're able to mute and unmute yourself. So if you want to say something, feel free to unmute yourself.
Nope, I just wanted to make sure that, because you didn't seem to be saying anything, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
We're just all being quiet and contemplative this afternoon, I guess. Or we're not used to talking to other people. I'm not sure which one. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna probably wait a few minutes past 1 o'clock. We had over 100 people registered for this, so we've got about 48 in here right now. So we're gonna give everybody a couple extra minutes to get signed in here. So you're all being muted as you come in, but feel free if you have a question for the group or want to say hello, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. I forgot to unmute myself, so I'll just say hi now. We've got about 50 people here so far, so we're waiting for about another 50.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
Deborah. Hello.
Victoria, hello. It's good to see everybody. This is so exciting.
It is. Okay, muting again.
Hello.
Hello. Did you want cameras on?
That
Sure, if you want them on.
Will that slow down the connection if we have all the video on?
I don't think so. If we have an issue, we can have people turn them off halfway, but it's nice faces, so I love to see everyone. But if you don't want to, not required, you can turn yours off.
I still need a haircut, so no.
You'll see what a mess my house is, or the space I've carved out of my basement.
That's why I'm sitting with my back to a wall, so you can't see anything else in this house.
Victoria is enjoying her lunch right now, we see.
I need a haircut so bad.
Me too. I wear baseball caps usually, but I'm even more so now.
Oh, that's a good idea, Karen. I'm gonna have to bust out there's no baseball, so I forgot about all my baseball caps, but.
My older daughter cut my hair. It worked great, I think.
And it's free.
I got the
Whatever
Bride of
works.
Frankenstein look going, so.
Victoria looks great.
No, you. All right, I'm muting for my pop chips, so.
And please excuse the fact that I have a cat on my shoulder.
That's the best part about Zoom meetings. I
I was
hope I
just
see
gonna
more
say.
cats here.
This
Hey,
is
Lori,
Cedric.
I'm glad to hear you're going to be sharing your musical talent tonight.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a Facebook Live concert tonight. I play
Yeah.
clarinet, and so I'm doing a Facebook Live concert.
Woohoo!
For the library?
Yeah, for the
Oh,
library
that's awesome.
at
Yeah.
7.
I'm making a note.
And I think it's going to be archive. Awesome! Another clarinetist.
Is it at 7 or 7:30?
7 to 7, like 20. I was like,
Yeah.
what are you, buddy? Yeah, we'll see how much the cats interfere with the concert tonight. I don't think they will, and I don't think the patrons will care if they
Yeah.
do.
And then you have to pan over just slightly to that huge puzzle you completed.
Which is, yeah, we did a 4,000 piece puzzle.
Oh my.
Yeah, which sadly is now back in the box because
Oh, it is? Oh, darn. Well, you have a picture
Yeah.
of the archive.
we took pictures. We
Yeah.
made sure we took pictures for posterity, and there were only 3 pieces missing because we bought it from a thrift shop like months
Yeah.
ago. Thinking,
Yeah.
when will we ever do this? Well, we found a time to do it.
Yeah. It was huge.
3D print the missing pieces?
Pardon?
Can you 3D print the missing pieces?
Probably, but then it would take some drawing talent to actually make it match. It was a really cool puzzle. It was a reproduction of an atlas from 1375. So it was just a really neat picture. But yeah, it took us 3 weeks. 3 weeks shutdown time. I'm sure it would take us a lot longer during normal life. So what's everyone else been doing?
Definitely not puzzles. Binge watching, reading, ebooks, going on walks. Those are the big ones.
Yeah, I've been thankful that the weather's gotten better so that we can go out for walks.
You might get your wish in the next week. It's supposed to be almost 80 next week, so that'll be great.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, wow. I'm finding out about even more clarinet players in the catalogers group.
Yeah, I'm gonna say first in-person catalogers meeting. We're gonna expect a little like pre-meeting concert.
We'll have
Let's
like
get organizing that, guys.
a quarantine technical services theme song or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a big old contrabass I could bring and play.
I will mention that I've got another meeting coming up, so I will probably, unfortunately, have to leave in the middle of this. So I apologize in advance for disappearing.
Well, we are recording it, so whatever you miss, Molly, you can catch up on Friday. We'll share the recording in CCS News. So Rachel, do you want to get started? We have about 83 people. We're expecting more to trickle in, but we might as well get started, and I'll admit people as they pop on.
Sure. Okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting. So in lieu of our technical group meetings, we are having networking meetings. So we have quite a lot on our agenda today. So our format is going to be a discussion. I'll go through each of our agenda items and pose our questions, and then anyone can feel free to chime in with ideas. And it would be helpful if you could use the raise your hand feature, if you're familiar with that. And you can also use the chat function to post questions. So Deborah will be helping to watch for the hands being raised and for questions being posted in group chat. And at the end, if we've missed anything and there's anything else you'd like to discuss, please do bring that up. So our first set of questions for today is, working from home has been very challenging. Are there libraries that have plans to continue to work from home after the libraries can open? And can anyone provide tips on accessing the staff client from home, projects you've been working on that are great to work from home, or any other advice you have for those who've been working from home and have been having difficulty with it?
In Zion, we are going to be out of the library totally until at least June 1st. For us, it may be longer because the Winthrop Harbor through Waukegan corridor is a significant hotbed for COVID. They have roughly 50% of the cases in Lake County through that corridor. Although right now we are only going to be out until June 1st. I'm also telling my people, and for those who don't know, I'm the assistant director at Zion, so to come up with teams so that if somebody, so this is for all of my departments. So for tech services, we've got 2 people, and those 2 people will not be in the building at the same time. So if one of them comes down with COVID, then we will still have somebody in tech services. So they are working out between them how they're going to do the workflow, but neither one of them, at least for the near-term future, will be in the building at the same time.
Sorry, Rachel, did you want us to respond to these only in the chat, or can we do like Molly just did and share?
You can share verbally.
Okay, this is Ross at Lake Forest. There are 3 of us in tech services. We've already been working for the last couple of weeks to catch up on what was left in March. And we're going to keep doing that. Probably starting next week, we'll be in each one of us 2 days a week. So that, because we also, the adult services said they want their stuff. So we just pushed carts through for 360 items that they've ordered over the last 9 weeks. So we're going to start getting flow.
Clarification, Ross. In the chat, you're working offsite or on-site, your staff?
Oh, yes. Well, no, we're working on site. We were not allowed to use the staff client from home, and we would need to be there most part to do a lot of the work anyway. So, because we don't have the materials with us.
We do have one comment from Sarah. she just finished her call number split. So that was one of the projects that several libraries have found that they've been able to work on from home. Would anyone like to comment on how their call number split project went while working on it from home?
I have a comment about access to the client from home. This is Gary.
Okay, go ahead.
Our IT guy prepared a couple of our older laptops for loading the staff client. We're getting a third one ready for the person who does our magazines, periodicals, so that they will, because we do envision that there will be continued work from home. And that way, rather than try to load the client on a personal PC, we're providing a library laptop that they can take home with them to access the staff client that way. So even when we're scheduled to reopen with Teams on, reopen for the staff, let me put it that way, on Monday, the 18th, and there will be 3 teams coming in, and we're managing that for both making sure that there's some staffing in each department, and also to ensure physical distancing between people in the workroom. But of course, it'll be a limited amount of hours people will be spending in the building, so we do expect there will be continued working from home, so that we are providing devices, library devices, for people that are pre-configured that they can take home.
Hello. We have a VPN connection. So including me, we're a staff of 11, our tech services, and the majority of our tech services staff have a VPN connection. So we've all been able to access the staff client. We've been placing orders all the way through, but those orders are still on hold with both Ingram and Midwest Tape. The soonest Susan, our director, wants orders to come into the building is June 1st. So that's tentative. And let's see, was there anything else to comment on? I don't know. Okay. If there's anything else, Deborah, was there any other questions, or Rachel at this time?
Oh, we've got some other comments in Zoom from Rich. It says our IT staff helped us set up the client. We've been doing a lot of record corrections, and some of us have brought materials to catalog. So 2 of them have the connection client installed at home, and they're going to start on-site part-time for a limited basis starting May 26. It'll be staff only.
And I'll comment on installing the client on both personal devices and library devices. So if anyone needs assistance installing the client on library laptops so that staff can access the client and Polaris from home, CCS is more than happy to provide guidance on how to do that. Your IT managers also might be familiar with that process. If the library doesn't have enough library laptops for staff, we can install the client on personal devices as well. We do need your director's permission to do so though. So if staff need the client installed on a personal laptop, we can do that, have permission from your director, and there's a form that we would need you to complete in order to do that. So just a couple of options for staff who might be continuing to work from home.
Yeah, our director didn't even want it on our work, laptops that are owned by the library, concerned about hacking or something like that. So we're not able to do any cleanup or anything, which is frustrating.
Related to some of the other answers that are in chat, Rich has said that they're using the public laptops at home, and got some answers related to our next question on the agenda here as well. And Cary Area Public Libraries says that their staff uses the client from home with a library laptop for EDI ordering and database corrections. Department heads are allowed in the building and have been doing some cataloging of items received. And they'll be accepting deliveries starting May 18th, and staff will be limited to coming in starting week of May 26th. Penny Ramirez says she's using the VPN connections to allow the technical service staff to access the client, and they're doing database cleanup and working on the bills. And
shout out to Crystal Lake. I believe, Penny, you guys are going fine free, right? So you're doing some cleanup of patron overdue fees. Is that what you mean by bills?
Well, no, the monthly bill process, we're using
Oh,
the acquisitions module. But yes, we are also, the CERC staff are working, they're using Leap though, but waiving fines. That's a huge project.
yeah, I bet.
So
And Kathy from MPLD says that her acquisitions person, sales person, and herself are using Polaris through a remote desktop, and one has access to the Leap. They are mostly continuing to work from home after they can reopen, in addition to working from being on site. The staff has been working on continuing education webinars, and as of April 30th, her team has come in once a week during set time slots to pick up materials, and then it's running the gamut from mending to processing and pulling invoices for deliveries. Okay, it looks like we're ready to move on to the next question. Unless anyone has anything else, they can post that in comments. So our next question is, what considerations have you been discussing regarding the reopening of the library and working in the tech services office again? This could be related to the staff schedules and safety precautions, safe workflows within the department, and how are items being quarantined when they come from vendors or when they're returned from patrons, and how long will you be quarantining items? I know some have already brought this up, such as the staff is going to be alternating days or is continuing to work from home. And there's been some discussion in the chat on the quarantine period. Several responses are that their quarantine period is going to be for 72 hours. And I've also read that a report says it should be for a week. Who would like to begin this discussion on this topic?
I'll go ahead and comment
Okay.
first. As a couple people in the chat have mentioned, the IMLS OCLC Battelle study, the first phase of that study, the results won't come out until August, but Rails has heard from members of that study, participants in the study, that initial results are showing that 3 days will not be enough time to quarantine materials. So CCS has recommended, will be recommending to governing board a system-wide quarantine of 7 days. And that will go to governing board for approval next week. Again, they won't get final results of that study until later in the summer, but to be on the safe side, CCS will recommend 7 days of quarantining for outgoing and then incoming materials as well. In the chat, Victoria is asking if that includes material from vendors. I would assume that specifically CCS will recommend quarantine materials that are being returned from patrons and then being returned via delivery from Rails when that resumes. I would assume that internally you'd probably craft similar rules for quarantine materials that you're receiving from vendors. Is anyone able to speak to that, if they've crafted some sort of early initial procedure? I know a number of libraries said that they've been receiving materials, or a couple of you have. Can anyone comment on that?
Yeah, we've been, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just jump in. We've been receiving materials and we've already cataloged them and sent them off to be shelved. So that's been over, like I said, the past 2 weeks. Then they would in fact be quarantined at this point for another 2 weeks at least before going out to any patrons. So, but we've been just processing them on with gloves on for the most part, but we also are having problems with the barcode stickers and the labels because they stick to the rubber gloves.
Hi, this is Gretchen from Park Ridge. We've got a plan, but that was before we heard about the 7 days. So I don't know if we'll change that with what we get from the vendors. However, we just opened up the floodgates for Baker and Taylor and we got 27 boxes the other day. So practically speaking, some of these we may not get to in 7 days anyway, just because we'll have so much. But the extra complication is that we have to wait 72 days between each person handling it. So the person unpacking it then has to date it for 3 days, and then the cataloger then has to date it for 3 days, and then the data entry person, and then the person labeling, and then patron services, or circulation, I should say. So it adds quite a few days to it. And we will not be wearing gloves, or people can if they want to, but we will have to wear masks.
We do have a good comment from Rich in the group chat. At his library, he's going to be working in 4-hour shifts. And since some are on separate floors, they'll be able to schedule the different floors according to those 4-hour shifts. Let's see, and there was a hand raised briefly. 1 second. Becky?
Receiving items for a couple weeks now, and we're not going to quarantine with different people in the department. We wear masks all the time, but people don't have to wear gloves. They can wash their hands. There's a sink close by, and they can use hand sanitizer. But we decided that we weren't going to do that. We talked about it, and that it just was completely impractical. Every time somebody touched something, it has to go into quarantine again. It just, I mean, we never quarantined or sanitized anything during every flu season. I know this is not exactly the same thing, but we're just not going to do it. Now, whatever CCS decides as a group, that's a whole other thing. But within the technical services department, boxes come in, we let sit for 24, if not more hours. Then we open the things, and they don't get checked in, they don't get processed right away. So there's always going to be time between people touching things, but we don't have like a specific number of days between like the cataloger touching them and the processor touching them.
I see in our chat we've got several comments coming in. It looks like most of them are saying that they're going to be handling both vendor and materials return from the patrons in the same way for the same quarantine period. And we do have a question from Jamie King. When will CCS be officially making recommendations for quarantine? Deborah, would you like to answer that?
Yep. Executive committee met today to review some standardizations for CCS for library reopenings. Those recommendations were either modified by executive committee or approved to be recommended to governing board, which meets next Wednesday on May 20th. So at that point in time, governing board will either approve or modify CCS's recommendation that CCS libraries follow a shared quarantine period of 7 days. We recommend that libraries will follow that shared quarantine period of 7 days until our region, and we're all in the Northeast region, until our region reaches either phase 4 or we get the results from the IMLS Battelle study, and that research shows a revision to the 7 days. So again, that recommendation is going to go to governing board and they'll officially vote on it next week.
So in regards to working with staff schedules and safety precautions, it looks like there's several libraries that are going to be alternating staff, and some are alternating by 4-hour shifts. There was a comment that came in when we were asking for suggestions for topics today on installing higher cubicle walls, and I was wondering if anyone here today would like to speak on that, if that's a definite plan that they're going to be installing new cubicle walls, or if that was just a question.
In Algonquin, we are going to be putting up, and this will be news to people from Algonquin who are on the call. We are going to be putting up visqueen between the workstations that are shared. Our situation is that some of the cubicles are actually they have a very short wall and they butt up against one another. So if you're sharing even a kitty corner, or do you say catty corner space, there is the potential for aerosol, to get out. So we are going to be installing visqueen between those just as an extra precaution, which is a less, costly way rather than actually getting a new cubicles of some sort.
Well, it looks like we're ready to move on to the next topic.
I have a question.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask Gary, is that because your cubicles don't maintain the 6-foot distance?
That's correct.
That's
Yes,
why,
because
okay.
They're literally at times 2 feet away from one another.
Okay.
And even if you're catty corner, you're in a 4 or 5 foot. And really 6 feet is a minimum distance,
Right.
10 is actually even better, but 6 foot is the minimum recommendation.
I didn't hear, are your staff wearing masks as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We have another question in the chat from Victoria. I think it is for Gary. Are all of your staff coming back? Have they been surveyed by administration, specifically staff who are in high-risk groups and have childcare issues?
So yes, there was an actual form that went out that people were able to enter any concerns that they had about returning, any restrictions they might have in terms of high-risk people in their family, or childcare, which is a huge issue. And the teams were developed with those restrictions in mind, and with the understanding that there may be some people who will have a very limited ability to come in. We do plan on having Saturday hours even before we are offering any sort of public service. So that will give people an opportunity to come in rather than during the week, at least have one weekend day that they would be able to put in some time in the library to catch up on work.
So another question for Gary. What is the name of the material that you are using for the divider?
Well, if we're hoping to get visqueen, we have actually a construction crew in the building renovating our bathrooms. How fortuitous was that? And we are hoping to get construction grade visqueen for that. So that's the plan. It hasn't happened yet, but that's what we hope to do. It's actually called visqueen. That's the name of the product.
Victoria's question was actually for everyone. She's wondering about the survey that you have done with your staff, and specifically of high-risk groups and childcare issues. So would anyone else like to comment on surveying your staff?
And Anita had a question as well, just to add on to that one. For libraries that will have their teams working in shifts or on separate schedules, do you plan to disinfect work areas between those shifts? And Jamie has another follow-up question. We want all the details about everyone who's working in shifts. For those of you doing shifts, how are you breaking that down? Is it morning, evening, alternating days, alternating weeks, and so on?
Hi, in Park Ridge, we're doing alternating days. We have a team A and a team B, so the idea is the two will never mix on the same day, so they've been assigned their particular days. That just seemed easier than splitting it.
At Lake Forest, we're still too fluid. We're talking about 3, maybe 4 teams, and a lot of the people that have been, the librarians will be there, and they'll be doing reshelving and pulling things for holds and stuff, because a lot of the stuff that we've been doing with programs and stuff won't be happening in the building anymore. So we're going to try to do like 3 shifts on a day and have as many different teams of 4 to 5 people that we can have, so that if one shift goes out, another problem with that, like having just an AB or an ABC, one of them goes out, how do you replace them not being there? So like Gretchen, if team A goes out, does team B take over everything?
Yes, that's the idea. We try to split it so so that there's people who can do jobs that if team A is out, that we can still maintain those jobs by dividing the people by their skills into team A and team B.
Right, but what happens if team A has to be gone on for 2 weeks? Does team B then get split into 2 smaller teams to cover all the days?
I don't know. We didn't think about team A being gone for 2 weeks. You're saying if they get the virus and they have to be out.
Right.
There would be deep cleaning of the library, and if the library's been well cleaned and we bring team B in, I'd probably give them more days because we'd only have the one team to get all that processing done.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that there may come a point where you're just going to have, and maybe let people know we may not be able to do this after all, because because if it's if people are exposed, they're supposed to be quarantined for at least 2 weeks, even if they don't show symptoms or they test negative on the test.
So the question is, Ross, is everybody in the library following the same team? Because if they're not, if your maintenance person is in on both team A day and team B day, and that's the person who gets infected, then that's everybody. And we haven't gotten that coordination.
Right, yeah, it's going to be tough.
No, at Algonquin, we're breaking up into 3 teams. And so we will have a little bit of leeway in terms of if one team has to be in isolation for a 2-week period, that we have some leeway. We have enough staff that it would dilute the teams, but we would still be able to do it. But then what happens to them? And the idea of having 3 teams is that, again, it gives you a little bit more flexibility in case one team goes down, and we have 2 custodians, and they're not going to be in the building at the same time. So there should never be any cross-contamination of teams. And actually, that's one of the things we'll have to be careful of, is to make sure people are reporting on the right day.
So there's discussion in the chat here. I just wanted to read some of the responses that people are sharing. Kelly at Indian Trail said that they are doing shifts from 9 to 1, 1 to 5, and then 5 to 9. They'll only have a total of 20 staff in the building at a time, and only 4 staff working at a time in each department. At Northbrook, Lori says that each team will not work on the same day. The disinfecting will be done by maintenance during the day, and then again, a more thorough cleaning at night. Kathy mentioned that everyone will be responsible for cleaning their own workspaces, and then shared spaces by everyone who's using them. Victoria mentioned in the chat that they are looking at the 4 days on, 10 days off model suggested in the New York Times. We saw some requests for sharing that link in the chat, including myself. I'm interested in that article. At Crystal Lake, they haven't formalized a plan yet for shifts, but Penny said that they're anticipating staff will work some hours at home to supplement the time they spent in the building, and that they'll likely have teams for different days of the week. Oh, thanks, Victoria. Victoria shared that article she referenced in the chat, the link there. And then Laura at Northbrook says that they're considering a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, week 1, and then Tuesday, Thursday, week 2 for team A, and then a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, week 2 for team B. Yes, and Carrie is also shooting for 20 staff in the building at a time, and tech staff, the 2 of them will be there Monday through Thursday for receiving and processing. Lots of planning going on. Does anyone want to chime in or add anything else?
There was a question about the survey. Someone wanted to know if you could share your formal surveys if you've done them. I know some had commented that their questioning had been informal, but if you have a way of sending the surveys out to the listserv, please do so. Or if you have a link to a survey that you could share in the chat, that would be great. And there was a question, one more, I need to take some time to find it. It was a bit further back. Someone had a question about, Binjao had a question about the schedules for alternating teams. What happens if you are unable to work your scheduled hours due to alternating teams? Are they paid for the full hours? Would anyone like to share an answer to that question?
At our library, the understanding is, it isn't a requirement, but the understanding is that you would be working a certain percentage of your hours. And whether that happens at home or at the library, I think we're being flexible and taking it more on a case-by-case basis rather than being very hard line and saying you have to be at the library for a certain number of hours. We're trying to be flexible because we understand that people have a lot of different conditions at home that might prevent them from spending as much time in the building than someone else might be able to.
We've got some answers in the chat. This Blaines only gets paid for time worked. And Northbrook has a percentage of hours at the library and at home and is on a case-by-case basis. Well, I think we're ready to move on to the next question. So that's agenda item number 3. When do you plan to start deliveries from vendors? Have you started to accept deliveries in anticipation of opening? And are selectors ordering new materials or just filling carts?
Hi, in Park Ridge, we just let Baker and Taylor know to start sending, and I understand we got 27 boxes yesterday. I haven't been in the building yet. And we have not notified our other vendors. We are waiting for a definite agreement from the board, but we will be releasing, having Midwest Tape and all our other vendors also start sending their materials. But Baker and Taylor said they'd stagger it, but their idea of staggering and ours was a little different.
Up in Zion, 2 weeks ago now, we signed up for UPS Choice. So both Baker and Taylor and Midwest Tape use UPS for shipping. So we have some idea when deliveries are happening. I authorized our selectors to send in for, and this is for us because Zion's not a huge library, but they can order up to 500 items per week. They can only put they can only order items that are in stock. The only things that I'm letting go to back order right this moment are bestsellers, new movies, and the children's award books. Because we've got a June 30th year-end date. So I'm trying to manage stuff, letting them spend their money before the end of the year without overwhelming everybody. I'm going to reassess at the end of the month. We're going to see how much stuff has gone to back order, and whether we're going to cancel back orders for reorder in July or what. But we're trying, and I'm having them only release orders on Mondays so that all of our shipments hopefully are coming in on the same day. It's kind of working. We're getting some back or some stuff from Baker and Taylor that was suspended when we had to close in March. So some of that stuff has been coming in, but we're trying to make sure, do what we can to make sure everything shows up on the same day so that the maintenance and security staff that are stuck waiting for these deliveries aren't stuck every single day waiting for hours and hours and hours for UPS to show up. So we're in week 2 of this and it's kind of working. So.
Got a lot of comments on the topic in the chat. So Indian Trails has started to receive materials from UPS. And Fox River Valley has opened up for deliveries from England and Midwest Tape. Brodart and Baker and Taylor will be after June 1st. Corinne is getting ship notifications via email so that she knows how many boxes to expect with tracking numbers. And Victoria has been ordering all along. Bin Zhao has been filling carts, but only ordering the e-titles. Baker and Taylor may be able to stagger the quantities. Does anyone know about the process of staggering quantities from Baker and Taylor? No? Okay. Some other comments are that Penny Ramirez says that her vendors are still on pause for Crystal Lake, but if a delivery person shows up when the maintenance staff are in the building, they are accepting the deliveries. They are not placing new orders, but are just continuing to create carts. Kit Moore has said they're already creating the purchase orders and on-order items, but they're not ordering yet. Fremont selectors are filling the carts, and technical service staff are starting to place their EDI orders from home, so they should be receiving orders soon. Lake Villa has been ordering and will start to receive once they're allowed back. Indian Trails is going to be receiving from Baker and Taylor and Midwest Tape starting on Monday, and selectors have been filling carts and sending carts directly to acquisitions. And Indian Trails is sending orders to vendors weekly as usual. Evanston is not receiving materials at this time, but will probably start receiving them in early to mid-June.
And Becky has an interesting comment in the chat. She said that selectors have been asked to only order patron requests and must-have. And and that they have automatically yours for new fiction. And a couple of other staff commented that they have shifted to focus on ordering e-resources. So does anyone want to comment on shifts in their ordering strategies for these next upcoming months?
What we've decided, we had, all of our selectors had just been filling carts since March, but we hadn't been ordering. And so we did send all those orders and we got lots and lots of stuff in. But it's just all the stuff that needs to be cataloged, of course. And patrons are just not going to be asking for that stuff. They can't come in the building. And we have started Curbside, but we're only doing that for Glencoe residents. And most of our collection circulates, with the exception of new fiction and movies. The collection circulates because people get to come in the building and they get to browse. If they're not browsing, then they don't really know what's out there. So after seeing just the volume of stuff that came in over the past couple weeks, I've asked them today to only do holds and to do must-haves, things that they expect people are going to be calling up and asking us to give to them for Curbside. So that's where that was coming in. But back in March, we did up all of our e-resources as much as we could.
Hi, one of the things we've also done is our non-hodables, our browsing new books and our hot DVDs. We've temporarily changed those to hodable because nobody can come in and browse right now anyway. So that though they will be more copies we can lend out when we start Curbside or contactless service.
We have another question for Becky from Tim. He is wondering about starting Curbside and if your board voted that it was an essential service.
We had a special board meeting last week, and they decided that it was a special that it was an essential service. But at a special board meeting, you can't vote, and so when they have their regular board meeting next Wednesday, they will vote that it is an essential service.
And I see there's a question for me in the chat as well from Karin to talk about how holds have changed now. So with libraries reopening on a limited basis and Rails delivery being paused for the time being, we've modified the RTF or request to fill, essentially the pick list settings, so that items will not be sent in transit between CCS libraries to fill holds. So only, for example, Glencoe items can fill holds for pickup at Glencoe. In addition to that, CCS's recommendation to governing board and to executive committee will be that our pickup anywhere policy for CCS patrons will be suspended until Illinois reaches phase 4, so that libraries can choose whether or not they would like to offer curbside pickup or hold services to only their patrons or to all patrons. Karin, did that answer your question? And I do see a comment from Matt here in the chat as well that Indian Trails is going to make their hot picks holdable to Indian Trails members. So that falls in line with what Becky's saying, is that our browsing collections, when patrons can't come in the building, they can no longer browse those collections. So making those materials, it looks like Indian Trails is planning to make those materials holdable. Becky is asking if there will be a purchase alert so that selectors have that information. I'll have to look, Becky, at the existing purchase alert that we have in web reports to see what those parameters are. I believe that purchase alert will look at holds only by your local patrons, but we may need to add in a component for your local patrons for pickup at your location as well, rather than a different CCS branch. So we'll go ahead. That's a good comment. We'll look at that report and make sure that it's giving you the information that you would need. And if anyone has a suggestion for an additional report that we can create to help you navigate this time, let us know. We're more than happy to work towards that. Karin has a question asking about receiving items in the acquisitions module. When you receive items in acquisitions, you get a pop-up that shows how many holds are on that record. I believe you will still see, let me know if I'm right or wrong. I believe you see all holds in CCS I believe you'll continue to see that, but I'll need to do some testing to check on that. So I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, this is Karen. I just wanted to clarify that because that would help us know priority-wise if there are patrons that we want to get that item done right away versus if it was all these other libraries that we can't send out right now. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, I think that pop-up would still say all holds, but we can definitely generate some type of report to make it easier for you to find those. I know that we have some SQL queries saved in the client find tool that can help you find and process items that have holds by your patrons. But if it'd be helpful to have a web report as well that would help you find those items, we can work towards that as well. So Karin, I might open a ticket for you if you don't mind.
Yeah, I can open a ticket.
Okay, thank you.
We have quite a lot of comments on this question of how to accept deliveries and curbside. So since most of the answers are in the chat, I'm not going to read through all of them verbally, but I will be making the chat transcript available to everyone after the meeting is over so that you can read through all of the answers yourself if you don't have time right now as we're moving on to additional questions. Let's see. So there is a comment from Kelly. Said Matt mentioned that it might be possible that CCS could limit the holds that acquisition sees to just our members. Deborah, do you know about that?
I don't, but we can work with libraries to troubleshoot that. I'm not quite sure, so we'll have to do a little bit more research on that.
Jamie is suggesting that you can have a record set with holds for your patrons.
And it also looks like a couple other libraries are doing something similar to what Becky said, is that they're making their most wanted collections holdable and available for patrons to request via curbside pickup or drive up.
Actually, that's what we aren't doing that. We were just I was talking about how we're not going to be ordering as many just you know, things that get good reviews but that you don't really know are going to be popular necessarily, because those are the kind of things that, you know, people come in the library and then they see them on display and then they check them out. With curbside, people can call, and if they see a bestseller, and that's what our no holdables are called. If they see that on the shelf, then they can ask us to just put that aside for them. But we are keeping that that idea open, that we might just make all of our bestsellers holdable. But I was just talking about browsing in general, you know, coming into the library and just looking at the new books and just, you know, picking from things.
Yeah, Park Ridge said that we are changing those to holdable during this period.
Karin has posted 2 links to information on home delivery. We'll be starting home delivery next week at Fox River Valley. Binjao has posted that at Highland Park, technical services will be planning on giving support to the other departments, such as handling returns, reshelving, and curbside. Kathy has a question for Jamie. Can you please send directions to me as to how to set up the auto record set for holds?
And if anyone wants to create a record set that updates automatically, you can open a help desk ticket by emailing help@ccslib.org, and Bob and S will help you get that set up.
Well, it looks like the Fox River Valley link isn't working. Corinne, do you have a link that's working that you could post?
It looks like the second one works, the first one aired out.
Oh.
So if anyone, I'll pop that back in the chat for all of you. Rachel, do you want to maybe move on to the next agenda item?
Yes. The next item is number 4. With so many items to catalog when we are ready to reopen, libraries could get materials to their patrons faster if CCS temporarily allowed items without full bibliographic records to circulate. What would be the pros and cons of doing this? Kathy has posted in the chat that the pros would be getting the materials out faster, but the cons would be that there would be poor bibliographic records missing access points, with poor access for the patrons or staff to find materials for curbside and placing holds. Is anyone planning on trying to do this, or have we all decided that it's not the appropriate thing to do?
Everything that I've sent upstairs, I've cataloged it first, and yeah, I've been doing a lot more than I would typically do of like popular fiction, which I don't think I ever catalog popular fiction because someone else gets to it first.
Got several comments about how it would be good to get the materials out faster, but they wouldn't be sure if they'd ever be able to get back to working on those records and fixing them up. So I know one thing we did when I worked at the University of Alabama was that in trying to get the records out quicker and eliminate the backlog, we accepted lower quality records as long as it was just a MRK level and had at least one subject heading and classification numbers. The copy catalogers accepted the records, but if it was missing something, then it was sent to a cataloger to correct it. So they were willing to accept it as long as it was not a full level record, as long as it had the proper access points. So that is one option.
Hi, this is Ross at Lake Forest. I'm thinking too that, we have preliminary records in there. I would think that especially places with a smaller tech services staff, to just let it go and just attach your item and let it ride on that. So, and a bigger place will get to it, once it's in, unless the, place with fewer tech services people, if it's a unique to you, then I would say you should do the full, but otherwise that would be my thinking, just to let that go, so.
Looks like most of our comments coming in now are stating that the full record is better. And they will just have to get used to having a larger backlog Evanston gets the records from Baker and Taylor, so those are already full as well.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that we can play by ear as well. This is a new situation for all of us, and as the word unprecedented keeps coming up and up, and I think that if this is something that we need to revisit in another month, then we certainly can do so. But it seems like for the time being, everyone seems roughly in agreement that a full bibliographic record is something we'd like to continue with for circulating materials.
One option could be that if you get new materials in and they haven't been cataloged yet, you could wait to see if a library like Evanston catalogs it first, because they'll already be inputting the full level record in, and then you could move on to something else. Is that something that some of the libraries have been doing? Is just waiting to see if a full record gets input in first?
Yes, especially for video games. Thank you, Algonquin.
Kathy does ask, should we start having a conversation as to our bibliographic description requirements? So I think that's something that we could put off till we have a scrap meeting again. And we do have a question from Anita about the responsibility of who would be responsible for inputting the full records. So that is a good comment to make about all sharing the responsibility of creating the full level records and instead of waiting. All right, we are going to be moving on to the next question. I think we've answered this one. So we have several miscellaneous questions that came up in our request for topics. So one was, is there a way to create a preliminary data record in Polaris Leap? So the answer to that is no. You can only create the account records for patron account records in Leap. And our next question was, how are libraries planning to process or handle materials to be withdrawn or that need to be repaired? So I know there is a CERC status button in the item record for repair that you could select instead of withdrawn. And I was wondering if there was anyone else that would like to comment on their workflow related to this topic or have any further questions related to this topic.
This is Gary from Algonquin. We actually talked about this at our last management team meeting. And rather than inundate technical services, and actually our pages do a lot of the physical withdrawal work, what they're going to be doing, because it seems like once we're back in the building, and it's going to be a long time before patrons are ever setting foot in a library building, I'm afraid. This would be a great project for selectors to do. So what they're going to do is actually do the background work and mark the books that are going to be withdrawn. And staff will be on the lookout for those, because if it's a patron requests the item, then that's actually something that should be removed from the withdrawal list. So it will give the selectors an extra task to do when they're in the building, especially before we start doing curbside, and we'll then put off all of the physical materials being pulled and sent out of the building.
Kathy has posted her workflow in the group chat. It says our selectors build record sets of the items they're withdrawing and set the item statuses to withdrawn and then dispose of the materials themselves. Technical services staff then delete the item record sets. And for repairs, the current plan is subject to change. There are 72-hour item quarantine between each person handling these items. Are there any other topics that anyone would like to bring up today? We have some additional time because we did schedule the meeting until 2:30. And any other comments that you'd like to make on the existing agenda items are welcome at this time too.
Hi, Nita Lakeville again.
Yes.
Somebody had mentioned in the chat that they were helping out their CERC department and shelvers and things like that. How many libraries are planning on doing that and maybe assisting with curbside? And then the opposite way, how many libraries are going to be expanding, possibly having other people from other departments helping with the backlog and tech services? If that's something you're going to do.
Sure, that's a great question. Would anyone like to share their answers?
In Algonquin, we did specifically talk about each department assisting in circulation, and our circulation manager really indicated that the only unknown in her mind once curbside delivery starts is the actual physically taking the items out to patrons and putting them in their trunk. So that's the one area that we know for sure that CERC is going to need help on. Actually, very interestingly, I did not think about the converse. So that's actually a good idea, but we already have the pages helping us with withdrawals, which is very, very helpful, but we'll have to keep an eye and see if they can reciprocate.
So Tim commented in the chat that at Evanston, Tech and CERC are the same department. They'll work together once curbside begins there. Over at Crystal Lake, Kit says that they might have a couple people from other departments help with receiving when that time comes. So it seems like people are thinking about this as well.
Just to let you know, we have not finalized our plans, but there are people in other departments who would like to do help in tech services to help fill their hours while we're closed to the public. And it's interesting, everybody thinks they can help out with processing and the processing people, including, and me too, are a little bit wary about that because it's difficult to convey to people necessarily that it's not, there's a skill to develop, even processing level of things. So there are some things that I was thinking of that people could help with, possibly doing some RFID tagging because they've done that in the past, or maybe some other kinds of things. But it's very interesting what people are volunteering for. They want to be helpful, though. They do.
Yes, I just wanted to throw that, and I just put in the chat. Yes, Anita, they seem to think that I don't know what they think we are, if they think of us at all. That it's just a rote kind of thing that anybody could step into. I'd be concerned about another set of hands myself being in there, and then you still want to check it to make sure this person who you've newly trained is doing things right. I also want to throw out an idea on curbside that somebody else mentioned to me, is possibly using a drone from wherever you are at the building to pick them up, fly them over to the car, possibly right into the trunk or near the car and set it down. The person in the car could come and get it out of there. I think it would be, people would just go crazy and love it. The kids especially. Look, here come our books on the drone. Just want to throw that out there because I think it is going to be hard to take them back. Also, they're going to want to hand them to you, their returns, when you bring them the bag of new.
Drone sounds like a really interesting idea. Do any of the libraries have drones in their Library of Things collection yet to check out that you could use?
I think that's cool. Ross, let us know how it goes over at Lake Forest.
Well, we haven't brought it up here yet. Don't tell anybody. Thank you.
We're putting that in. Lake Forest is using drones. But Brad notes that the FAA would have issues with commercial use of drones with that regulation. So thank
Actually,
you.
no, because it's just on your property. It's not going to their houses or anything. So it's just like flying a drone in your yard. So.
Karin also suggests dog delivery as well. So as an alternate option to drones. We do have a couple comments that I wanted to share in case you missed them in the chat. Both Tim and Jamie mentioned a couple of concerns about having staff from other departments come help out in tech services. Jamie mentioned that if we're trying to limit people in the department and, you know, train people with our social distancing practices, that could be something that you need to take into account. Tim mentioned it could be difficult to train staff trying to stay 6 feet away, especially for something like processing materials. So another consideration when it comes to cross-departmental coordination.
Becky has a comment related to the discussion on Curbside earlier. She says, we won't accept returns at Curbside, but the book drop is still open. There has also been a conversation ongoing in group chat about how to handle daily newspapers. Does anyone have any specific plans that they'd like to comment on how they're going to be handling daily newspaper delivery?
It looks like a number of libraries have paused newspaper delivery during this time, including Evanston and Des Plaines. Some libraries continue to receive delivery for historical purposes. Some libraries haven't thought of that, which I hadn't thought of that either. So it's helpful that this was brought up today. Yeah, Niles has paused theirs as well.
So there are some additional comments on accepting returns. Some of the libraries do have their drive-up windows, so they will be accepting returns there and at the book drops, but some of the libraries are not accepting returns at their drive-up windows, but will only accept them from the book drops.
Yes, and my comment wasn't that we are going to be taking them back, but I think people will try to hand them off to you. So to be aware that that's also an interaction you have to be aware of.
Yeah, we talked about that in our management team meetings too. How do you handle patrons that don't want to play by the rules? And we're just going to have to take a hard line. And I think for the most part, people understand how deliveries are working now. A lot of people have had experience, but some of it will have to be training. And we do have the luxury of having a drive-up book drop that we then empties into a room, which will be, in essence, our dirty room, which we can isolate from the rest of the library. And I only say that in jest, but really it will create a natural barrier that the items that are coming in there will be completely separate from the area where we're checking out and then taking books out for people to get their deliveries. We're not going to start that till probably June 8th.
Connor has a question. about staggering returns. Is anyone deciding to stagger the returns on certain days or by last name or for a particular day? So there's a comment that they are possibly thinking of staggering returns by last name. Penny commented that they're thinking of doing what Wheaton is doing. Once they get to the point of accepting returns, it will be for limited hours per day and only accept the returns in that time frame. So other libraries are saying that they're planning on doing it alphabetically. Fox River Valley says for their home delivery, the driver is not permitted to accept materials from patrons to return to the library, but the patrons are still encouraged to hold on to the items that are currently checked out. And the book drop at Dundee is open for patrons who want to return their materials already. Evanston has an interesting idea to rent moving pods and let the people return materials there. Are there any other libraries that are interested in renting the pods?
Actually, we've had discussion about using them as where the people could be picking the stuff up from. There was talk about maybe using tents, but with the wind and rain possible. But at the pods, you can just close it at night and lock it and leave the stuff in there if they didn't pick it up during the day. So, you know, that way they would be able to pull up and just grab their bag that's right there. So just another option.
If I could share a quick comment about returns, this is Rebecca. I just popped in after executive committee. Executive committee is recommending to governing board that CCS continue to extend due dates through the stay-at-home order, even for those libraries that do restart curbside. So even if someone, you know, has items delivered or picks item up, they don't feel pressured to come and return it. I know so many of us are fine-free already or moving in that direction, but some people still see that date and like really feel motivated. So that is something we'll be talking about at governing board next week. I know patrons also ignore due dates and want to return what they want to return, but just something to keep in mind for your planning. And right now, due dates have all been extended through July 1.
We do have a question from Kathy for those that are limiting returns to certain times and days. How are you planning on enforcing that? Patrons just leave books by the Dropbox to return them when they want, usually.
This might be a learn as we go thing. The CERT group is meeting tomorrow as well, so that's a question I can bring up to that group as well to get some more information. So we can also, we'll also be recording that meeting tomorrow as well and sharing it in Friday's CCS News, so we can see if our CERT friends have some more insight about how they might be enforcing those type of restrictions.
Are there any other questions or comments? Becky has
just a question. about, this is our networking meeting. What about regular meetings for next year and officers and all that kind of thing? Is that been decided, or is that just kind of been tabled? Because I know there was a call for people to volunteer at one point, but then everything, hit the fan.
Yes, we'll be starting up in-person meetings when we can in the next fiscal year, and we'll not be able to vote on officers until we have an in-person meeting again.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
I will say that, so we're going to have another meeting, technical group networking meeting in June, but we've canceled our formal technical and advisory group meetings through the end of the fiscal, so through the end of next month. It's CCS's recommendation that because all of our meetings bring together large numbers of staff from all across northeastern Illinois, that we wouldn't have in-person meetings and training until our zone would reach phase 5. So don't quite know when that would be, but CCS will need to talk about if we can't meet in person for our technical group meetings in the next fiscal year, transitioning those meetings to a virtual environment if we're able to do so. Seems like everyone is pretty skilled with Zoom nowadays, since we have a billion Zoom meetings every day. So we may just need to transition those meetings to a virtual environment until, again, we reach phase 5. But I do hope for the day when we're all together in person again. Miss our meetings a lot.
Karine has a question. Are other libraries making their current hot or prize pick type materials that are not holdable to be holdable temporarily? Lynn did respond that Displays is planning that. Does anyone have any other questions or comments? Rich had one more comment that they are making the hot picks holdable temporary at Indian Trails. And Connor is asking if there are any other thoughts on newspaper delivery after libraries reopen. He's concerned about transmission and lingering by multiple patrons looking at the newspapers. I think that would be a good question to bring up at the circulation meeting as well. So that might be something to add to the list if you're willing to attend that circulation meeting.
Yeah, and I do think that some of these questions, such as how long the virus would linger on physical materials, might be answered by the IMLS OCLC Battelle study. But at this time, I do think that we don't have an answer to whether or when a newspaper would become safe to handle. So hopefully we'll get some answers based on science once we get those results back.
Deborah, can you post the circ meeting link in the chat?
I'll send the circulation meeting to the listservs after we hang up. It's somewhere in my email.
It looks like all the questions are starting to wind down, so we will be adjourning the meeting now, and we'll be having another meeting next week. I mean, not next week, next month. So in that time period until we ask for any other topics, please take some time to think of any additional topics that you would like to talk about next week as you're preparing to open or as you're dealing with any problems you've had while starting to reopen your library again. And we will be sending out the form to respond to who's going to be attending the next meeting in a couple of weeks. So thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you again at our next meeting next month.